What you doing up there, Dexter, huh? What you doing? Hey, all you salty dogs. Today on the Renegade show, we are going to be talking about through-hole fittings and getting rid of holes in the boat. What is it? What are you harping about, huh? Huh? What are you doing? You'll come and say hi? You'll come say hi to all the YouTube people? So as we're walking over here with Dexter, this is what I'm going to pass on to you guys, is on a boat, anytime you can get rid of a hole that's below the water line, that is a good thing. And that's what this video is going to be all about. There's Miss Otter over there looking all sad and dejected. All right, Dexter, load up. What I say. So we're going to be getting rid of these through holes below the water line, and the question is, why would we gonna get rid of these things? Well, the first reason is through holes are expensive. Depending on the size of the through hole for everything you need, the through hole, the fitting, the valve, the barb, everything there, you're looking at anywhere from $350 to $1,500 for a through hole, depending on the size. The ones I'm using on this boat, the 1.25 inch, they are running about $400 for every protrusion through the hole. So that is a lot of money to have to replace, and that's why people don't replace them very often. The next reason is that because when a through hole doesn't get replaced, because they are expensive, so people try and get the maximum lifespan out of them, what that means is that oftentimes they do fail, and when they do fail, the boat will sink, like this boat that we rescued with a can of Pabst Blue Ribbon after the through hole on the toilet broke off. That's exactly what happened there. And by the way, guys, anytime we move to a new part of the boat, I'm going to pop up the boat's drawing here, and I'm going to show you where it is on here that we're working at. Currently serving the head, we have these 3 through holes here. Now, the first 2 of these through holes, those are going to get removed. What we'll do is I'll taper that out, glass it back in, glass it from the backside, and those holes will completely go away. It'll be as if they never existed at all when the paint goes back on the bottom. This one here is going to get a new tapered through hole fitting, and once that's installed, I'll have a brand new fitting there, and that will be hooked into the bonding system. Now, bonding is another thing on a boat that is of critical importance, and the reason that bonding is of critical importance is because when you're sitting in salt water specifically is able to carry electrical currents, and what that means is if there are stray currents within the water, those currents can go to these fittings on your boat, and they will create a charge there which will actually make the fittings waste away. It's a process of electrolysis. It actually eats the material away through the process of just leaching it into the water if the current is moving in that direction. So the idea being is that you put a sacrificial material on the boat in the form of a zinc. And when you have that zinc on the outside of the hull, those zincs need to be kept up. You're going to have one on the prop shaft. You're going to have one on the outside of the hull, maybe more than one on the outside of the hull. But everything in your bonding system is going to be tied into that zinc. Once everything's tied into that zinc, what that's going to do is it means that the current is going to move in the right direction, and it is going to leach away from that zinc instead of leaching away from everything on your hull. Now, back here on the propeller, you can actually see on one of the propeller blades right here where it is that there was some damage from electrolysis. What it is that a little bit of the stray current has got in there. It has eaten away the tip of that blade. And the reason for that is the zinc that went on this propeller fell off, didn't know that, wasn't aware of it, and so the diver that I had install it didn't install it properly at some point. So I don't know how long it was gone, but it was gone long enough that this blade suffered a little bit of damage. So before I go back in the water, I actually have to take this propeller off, have that edge welded back up, and then have the thing reground and a little bit of work done to it. They're going to balance it and make sure that she's absolutely tip-top, ready to go. In this sense, the propeller is also of critical importance because if the propeller is out of balance, that can open up another hole into the boat. And where that hole is here through the shaft log, because this is the cutlass bearing right here. This is the bearing that the propeller shaft rides on. It's just got a rubber-style bearing on the inside of there. That bearing gets water on the inside of it, which cools it up, which means there's water all the way up in the boat, all the way up the shaft log into the back of the engine, and then right where that shaft log comes out, it's just a piece of fiberglass tubing that goes through. Where that comes out of the shaft, that is the packing bearing, and if the packing bearing is leaking, which, by the way, is what happened to my boat the second time around it tried to sink. I woke up one morning and my bilge pump had quit, and I had water all the way up to the floorboards, and it was because it had come in through that shaft, and so that was the point at which I stopped running the boat around, and we came out of the water back in, well, as October 1st is the end of September, is the last week in September this happened. And so I had water that was constantly coming in through that shaft log. I couldn't tighten that nut anymore because there's a ring of packing seals in there. And once those seals have been compressed to a point, they just don't compress anymore. So I had tightened it down as far as it would go. And so one of the things we'll be doing on this haul out is changing the packing in the packing bearing. And that will seal the shaft. Now the next ones I'm going to worry about here, these are a potential boat killer. There's one of these on each side. These are the drains for the cockpit, and they're not very big. That's 1.25 inch through hole, and that cockpit is like 10 feet long. So if I take a boarding wave over the back end of the cockpit, it's going to take a lot of time to drain, but also this through hole is below the water line, and that through hole being below the water line, what that means is that if that valve breaks off of there, or that hose comes off the back of the valve, that this will just be a hole in the boat that's underneath the cockpit in a really hard to get to place, and it'll probably sink the boat. I probably will not be able to get in there fast enough to seal that. I would have to jump over the side of the boat and try and drive a bung in that, which could be very difficult to do. And up here in the Pacific Northwest, the water runs 46 to 48 degrees, and so that would be a very, very difficult task to do. Diving in this water is not easy at all. So instead, what we're going to do is actually about in the location this jack stand is here, up above the water line, we're going to build a plenum in there, and off of that plenum, there is going to be a gate valve, and they're actually a pair of gate valves that go up through a piece of fiberglass tubes that go to the corners of the cockpit, and they'll have holes that are knocked through there. And what that will allow the water to do is to go out through those tubes, exit the transom here, and then if we get hit by a wave in the rear, instead of allowing water to come up inside the boat, the gates and those valves will prevent the water from coming back in. It'll make sure that the water stays out, and it'll be the one-way only. And also, just with the much larger size of those pipes, it means that any water that comes into the cockpit will drain much, much faster. And then we come to this through hole right here, and this through hole is the one that broke off in that previous video my boat tried to sink. And this one, it's just going to go away completely. We're going to straight up remove it. This is the intake for the engine. And if you look up here, this hole, this is very small. That is only about 1/2 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch in diameter, or excuse me, 3/4 of an inch in diameter. That is not a big through hole. She's already kind of chewed up on the inside. She's suffering from a lot of corrosion, so it just needs to go away. That's probably been there for a very long time. It's time for that one just to be gone. So we're just going to glass that one in. Let me show you what we're going to do with that. Now over here on the other side of the boat, we have the same through hole again. And that through hole this time is just going to get hogged out to a bigger size. We're going to put one of these bigger valves in here. And by putting that bigger valve in, what that is going to do for me is give me enough capacity through this through hole to run the intake for the sink, which this is now. It's currently the intake for the sink, but it'll run the sink, it'll run the engine, it'll run the water maker, and it will run a washdown pump and a washdown for the anchor. And so that means that one through hole takes the place of 5. I really like that, so I won't need separate water intakes for each of those things. That's less valving, and the best part is that this through hole here is going to be accessible through the bilge instead of having to crawl over the top of the engine to get to where that engine through hole is now, because it's in a very bad place. And then over here we have the through hole for the transducer. And so this is the old depth sounder. This thing is just like a spinny wheel. It doesn't really work all that great anymore. I don't know if it ever did in the first place. But we're just going to go ahead and delete this altogether. I don't know if it's going to happen on this haul out, but eventually at some point what's going to happen is down here on the bottom of the keel, we're going to go in down here on the bottom, and in there one of the big Furuno transducers is going to get installed there. And it's going to take some special work to do that. There's going to be a lot of fitting to make all that happen. So that's going to be a little bit more of an involved process, and I'll kind of take you guys in on what that's going to involve. And then over here, this is just the through hole for the sink. I'm just going to stick a new through hole in that one and call it good. We're really not changing anything there right now, so we're not going to worry about that one. Just know that that one is going to get a new through hole in it. So what I've got here is one of the new through holes, and what's different about this from the old through hole, if we put it next to the old through hole here, you can see that there's quite a bit of difference. The old Throughhole, big flat base on it, and then it had the little nubbins that stick up that allow it to not spin. The new one has to be threaded from the outside, and the reason for it is the new one has this 3-bolt flange that goes on there, and that 3-bolt flange makes this thing a lot stronger. And the whole point of that is if you have something fall over against this valve, that flange there gives it an added bit of support. It's just quite a bit stronger than just the nut supporting it there. There's quite a bit more surface area on there, as you can see. And it's just all about strength. And it makes these fittings probably 3 to 5 times stronger than they would be without it. So that's a really good thing to have. It's just an additional safety aspect. And the other thing about it that's great is it means that you could still remove the valve while the boat's in the water. You know, you have to plug it from the outside, you have to cork it. But you can remove that valve and replace it if it goes bad. And so that's a good feature. That's the reason I decided to go this way. Grocco does make a version where the 3-bolt flange and the valve are all one piece. Originally, I was going to go that way, and the reason I decided not to is just so in case the valve does have issues, in case the valve does seize up, I can just change the valve out, and we don't have to haul the boat, which costs several $100s. This Throughhole here is the new one for the toilet. It is going to go into this location right here. And in order to facilitate that, what we're going to have to do is that hole is going to have to be remade to take this flange. And so how I'm going to do that is I will tape up the threads. I will wax everything up really good. I'll put some releasing agent on there. And then I will, after I've ground that hole out, made it nice and super clean, I'll go in there with some fairing compound, and I'll squirt some fairing compound in there. I will tighten the through-hole down in there, allow that to cure overnight, and then I'll come back the next day, pop it out, remove the tape, and then just sand everything up really good. And then it should be set for installation, and then that way the through-hole can go in exactly where it needs to be. We'll cover that in its own video, though, when we get to that point. And so, guys, you can see by doing everything that we're doing here, I've got 10 through-holes right now. We are going to reduce that to 5 through-holes. So that is going to be pretty awesome, getting rid of half of the through-holes, half of the liability in the boat. You know, for like the cockpit, those are going to get moved back to above the water line. Others are just getting removed altogether. The systems are getting combined. And with modern technology, we're able to do that. And let me take you inside what is one of the biggest reasons for needing to do this and exactly why I'm making that happen. So right now I've got about 280 feet of anchor chain on the boat, and when you put most of that chain out and it gets dragged around on the bottom, it gets just filthy. And so when that chain comes up, it comes up with a lot of water on it, and then it goes down through the hose pipe here. What happens is when the anchor chain comes up, it drags all that mud, silt, sand, everything off of the bottom and a bunch of water down into the chain locker. Once it's in the chain locker, all that has to drain out, and it needs to go somewhere. And so that takes us back into the system here. You'll see we have this long tube that drains all the way back down, interconnects with the sink, and then it goes into the shower sump in here. So guys, what you could see from this is that by taking the time and thinking these systems through, figuring out where everything needs to run, 3D modeling everything first, I was able to come up with a great system that got rid of a bunch of the potential problems in the boat, is going to cost me less in the long run, and is going to make my boat function better. What it also means is that when I leave the boat, by having less through holes, because every time you leave a boat for any period of time, for more than just a couple hours, you want to go through and you want to shut all those valves off. And the reason you want to do that is in case a pipe burst. You know, one of those hoses comes off of there, and all that can be is from like a hose clamp that's gone bad. If that thing pops off of there, that's just water coming in the boat. And if you're on board, you could have just gone in and kicked the handle off. But if you're not on board, you don't know that there's water coming into the boat. And so the boat will just sit there and sink, and for a really silly reason. So that's why you definitely want to put double hose clamps on all of your hose barbs. You want to use the really good hose clamp fittings, the type that are the bolt style, not the type that are the screw style. When I leave the boat, only 3 of those through holes will have to be turned off. So guys, there you have it. This is all the through holes I'm removing on my boat. That's why you should think about removing through holes from below the water line and everything I'm doing there. I hope you guys got something good and entertaining out of this. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, please like, and if you have any questions or comments, leave a comment in the comments section down below, and we'll see you on the next one where we're going to be finishing out the work on this hull. And I actually found something kind of exciting, so stay tuned for that next week. We'll see you later. Bye.